Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first on the watch warning advisory map, we still have the flood advisory out here for the Kobuk River, as well as the small streams in both the Kobuk and Oatek River basins. That advisory out through 4:45 Sunday afternoon for minor flooding to continue in those areas. Moving on to satellite, you can see that really strong storm here we had over the southeast Bering Sea brought the strong winds yesterday into the southeast Bering with the hurricane force winds moving eastward into Bristol Bay today, slowly weakening. Pretty good wind gusts though across the Alaska Peninsula. High wind warning out there due to end shortly. And main front here pushing eastward and lifting northward, bringing gale force winds and some rain in along the North Gulf Coast, rain spreading northwestward across the southern interior, and also pushing in toward the Panhandle. Mid and high level clouds north of the Alaska Range, getting up to the Tanana Valley north of there. Lots of sunshine all the way out to the Arctic coast and or near the Arctic coast. Then you pick up some moisture back here to the west with that band of clouds that extends all the way down in across the northern Bering Sea. And the next system, the outer edge of the clouds, just reaching the central Aleutians during the afternoon hours or the midday hours there out west. This system definitely got the strong winds out of the northwest coming down, and gusts as high as 75 miles per hour at Falls Pass today. And St. George seeing some pretty high wind gusts as well, not quite that high, but those winds will be coming down here later tonight as this low center crosses the Aleutian Range and begins to move into the Gulf of Alaska. Otherwise, up to the north, breaking out here, actually the west from northern Koyukuk Valley or the northern Kuskokwim Valley up in across the Kobuk Valley. And on the chart today, we've got a trough out here associated with that area of cloudiness. Showers along the northwest coast develop into more of a widespread light rain, fog, and drizzle condition here as you get through the Bering Strait, and that wraps right on down into the Pribilof Islands, and those winds carrying it right into the Alaska Peninsula, spreading into Bristol Bay, areas of rain and fog with that low center slowly pulling eastward here. High pressure back out to the west, and then this area of strong winds on the west side of the low center here, again slowly weakening and moving westward as well. Next front off to the southwest, and the front bringing a pretty good shot of rain today up along the North Gulf Coast. Occasionally moderate, possibly briefly heavy rain going on, and that's starting to shift into the southeast coast, especially over the northern areas, and in toward the central coast, and then back across Prince William Sound into south central Alaska, and the clear skies up to the northeast. For tonight, that front moves right up to the Panhandle. Winds will be diminishing as it does, especially along the coast, but periods of rain overnight tonight with that. Back along the North Gulf Coast, stays wet into Prince William Sound. Pretty showery, chance of showers, northern Cook Inlet. Farther north you go, Madanuska-Sitna Valley, probably not much at all. Nothing in the interior, dry and variably cloudy. And clearing out a little bit back here in the west with some lingering showers, mainly over the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island area, and on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, with that band of moisture still extending back to the northwest and then up across the Bering Strait into the Chukchi Sea with some showers, possibly in the form of rain or snow. But whatever does fall will be quite light up in that area with light winds to go along with it. And then we've got the high pressure here and a narrow ridge right across the central Aleutian areas, down definitely getting the winds to come down here for the for the Unalaska area, and pretty nice back across Adak and Atka all the way out to Shemya. This the moisture with this front staying to the south, it looks like, even through tomorrow, mostly just slides off by to the east here, just possibly grazing the east central Aleutians, but otherwise high pressure in control of the southern Bering Sea. Still breezy out here in the west or along the west coast up into the Bering Strait, but not as windy. Looking now 15 to 25, maybe gusts 35 miles an hour in these winds, especially as they cross the Alaska Peninsula, which is much lighter than what we're seeing today. And still, with that pattern, all the low clouds, fog, and rain or drizzle will be on the Bering Sea side. Better conditions, Sandpoint, improving for Kodiak Island. Could become partly sunny here for south central Alaska tomorrow. Cook Inlet areas, dry though, all the way up into the interior. Areas of clearing, not widespread clearing. Be some clouds around, but the showers will be confined down over the Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, and a trough swinging into the panhandle there as that main front pushes off to the east by tomorrow afternoon. And looking ahead to Monday, we've got this low sliding into the south, so that'll just leave some scattered isolated showers over the panhandle during the day on Monday. The bulk of the moisture now off into Canada, clearing right off the coastline there, so the afternoon could be pretty good, and especially the evening. Upper level trough moving eastward here from the Bering Sea will bring rain back into the south central Alaska area from the Kuskokwim Valley. Good showers down along the Aleutian Range from Bristol Bay into Kodiak Island, and showers developing over Prince William Sound. Northward area of rain all the way to the west central Arctic coast. High pressure southern Bering Sea and Aleutians. Next system driving into the northern Bering Sea there from the Russian Far East. South spread rain to St. Lawrence Island with warm front type moisture all the way south to about the Pribilof Islands. And looking at the low temperatures forecast for tonight, not much change from what we've seen the last several days. Lower to mid 30s here for the north slope on out to the Arctic coast, and about that same temperature range over the east side here, possibly down to near or a little below freezing. Some of the colder areas there from, the eastern Copper River Basin on northward. Otherwise, 40s here south central Alaska to Kodiak Island, also for the Alaska Peninsula, and on out to the Aleutian area, or the southeast coast. Lows tonight 45 to 50. For the Aleutians, mid to upper 40s. Highs for tomorrow, upper 40s to lower 50s out there. And pretty nice up here over the interior again, north of the Alaska Range, 60, 65. Eastern Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, all the way back to the Koyukuk Valley into the 60s, possibly even the Susitna Valley getting near or into the lower 60s. Otherwise 50s here for southern Alaska. And then pushing on to the highs or the lows for Monday morning, 30s again in the north, 40s out to the west, 40s mid to upper for the southeast coast area. And out in the Aleutians, not much change as well, all in the 40s, maybe dropping to 39 there at St. Paul. High temperatures for Monday, mid 30s here for the north slope again, 40s here in the west, 30s and 40s to the east, and 40s on down the southeast coast, with lower 40s for the Aleutians. Not much change out over the western Bering.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, you can see quite a bit of IFR up here over the north slope, all along the Arctic coast up there, and an area here from St. Lawrence Island up into the Seward Peninsula. Marginal VFR south and southeast across eastern Bering Sea, the Alaska Peninsula. Pick up some IFR through here, extends up toward Kachemak Bay. Westerly flow, VFR for Kodiak Island, marginal along the coast. And for tomorrow afternoon, this area here expands and shifts on down to the south across Nunivak Island, along the Yukon Delta coast, back up through the strait. Not much change up here over the north slope, except maybe a little bit of an improvement over the western part of the area there. Good VFR through the interior, IFR persisting Kachemak Bay and the Aleutian Range. Now I've got IFR in the forecast on the east, now on the east side of Kodiak with marginal VFR along the coast and the Panhandle. Looking at Monday morning, still quite an area of IFR up to the north there from the Brooks Range, or maybe even a little bit to the south there from about the crest of the mountains on out to the Arctic coast there. A little bit better on the east side. Good VFR again through the central interior, east side, and then picking up some marginal VFR now along the southern slopes of the central Alaska Range on down to the south, marginal Kodiak Island, and across the southeast coast. Areas of marginal VFR looking really good out over the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. And then for Monday afternoon, no change out there. We've got some marginal stuff here from the Pribilofs on up to St. Lawrence Island, excuse me, back down along the coast, also along the Alaska Peninsula, and through the Barren Islands. Area of marginal VFR now in the central interior becomes IFR. South of the Brooks Range, Koyukuk Valley, back up to the Arctic coast. VFR here in the east, VFR for the southeast coast. Passes shaping up like this, Anatuvik and Anigan, both VFR tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill starting out marginal, improving to VFR, and that same forecast for rainy, probably going VFR sooner. And then for windy, VFR the entire day. Isabel, same forecast. Isabel, Mentasta, Tanita, and Portage starting out IFR, probably will go VFR when the winds turn westerly tomorrow afternoon. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR, maybe becoming VFR in the late afternoon. Freezing levels, 8,000 feet here, northwest Canada into the eastern interior areas, back down to 4,000 feet up along the North Gulf Coast. And then cooler conditions here southward, about 2,000 feet northern Bering Sea, 4,000 feet across the Fox Islands. And from there, taking a look at icing threats, areas of here from the western Arctic coast, kind of in a band here all the way down in toward Kuskokwim Bay. Heaviest areas are the best chances there in the shaded zones. Nunivak Island, Yukon Delta coast, areas of mostly light rime icing or mixed, possibly isolated, moderate, but nothing too serious. And also that same sort of pattern going on here for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Up across the Wrangles, a lot more moisture though down over the central and southern southeast coast here. So a little bit better chance of seeing some light, very isolated, moderate rime or mixed icing above about 5,000 feet or so. And then for the jet stream, for tomorrow midday, upper level low here, northern Bering Sea. Another one here south of the western Aleutians, southerly flow, those two branches northwest meet up here, west 140, 150 knots, southern Bering Aleutians. Split again right here, this one diving southeast along this upper low, tracking eastward. And then this branch, the weaker one, southerlies over the western interior, about 40 to 50 knots. High pressure, nice conditions here for the eastern interior into northwest Canada. And at 9,000 feet northwest, 10 to 15 in the interior here, west side. And then a band here of 25 knot winds from the Chukchi Sea, St. Lawrence Island, down along and off the coast to 30 knots across the peninsula. Lighter out to the west, winds picking up with that next storm over the western Aleutians. Strongest winds still to the south, and pretty light winds here along the southeast coast. 3,000 feet, same pattern, low pressure right off the coast. There are just 5 to 10 knot winds at this elevation. Pretty light, Gulf of Alaska, all the way for the eastern interior. Maybe easterlies at 20 on the eastern Arctic coast. And then again, north to northwest, starting out northerly, 30 knots there for the Chukchi Sea, and then 20 to 30 knot winds becoming more northwesterly as you head south across the Alaska Peninsula, and winds increasing over the western Aleutians. Turbulence-wise, light to isolated moderate chop here, Alaska Peninsula, and along the southwest coast, moderate or light up to the north.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and today I'm privileged to introduce Dr. Uccellini, the Director of the United States National Weather Service. Welcome back to Alaska, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Prior to being the leader of the National Weather Service, your work included an extensive look at snowstorms across the northeastern United States. These are the types of storms that can bring some of the country's largest cities to its knees. Tell me a little bit about your fascination with snow.
Well, as far back as I can remember, I've always been interested in weather, growing up as a kid on Long Island, New York, and was particularly fascinated by snowstorms, why they occurred. The distribution of snow was very varied across the entire region. The rain-snow line, all those things fascinated me right from the get-go. And I was interested in knowing how they worked, how the forecast worked, or more often than not didn't work one way or the other. And that drove me, that interest continued to build and drove me through high school right into college, wanting to be a meteorologist.
Okay, that's a fascinating story, and I think every meteorologist has a weather story like that in some way.
Right.
Due to Alaska's size and proximity to the North Pole, sometimes it's difficult to detect and analyze the weather patterns over Alaska. What's the National Weather Service doing to improve that weather detection?
Well, observations in this type of environment is a big challenge, whether it's from space or from what we call in situ observations from the ground or within the systems. Clearly, satellites have been playing an increasing role in providing the big picture, not only from a visual sense in what you see is occurring, but also from providing the data for numerical models that then are used to actually predict the weather. Alaska is actually pretty well positioned with respect to polar orbiting satellites, since you get a faster return of those satellites over your particular area. And in fact, the polar satellite system is the backbone for the observations that we use in our models, especially our global models, and they're particularly important for observing weather features that affect Alaska.
Alaskans live and die by the weather every day, and one of the strategic goals of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service is to develop a more weather-ready nation. What does it mean for Alaskans to be weather-ready?
Well, the strategic outcome is based on people being ready, responsive, and therefore resilient to the increasing threats to extreme weather events. Those threats are related to not only the nature of the events, but the fact that we're becoming more vulnerable to them as we have more people, more infrastructure that could be affected by these events. So we have to ensure that the observations we make for situational awareness, the forecasts we make for people to take the proper responses, are connected to people's actions, the response to these events, so that they will be more resilient to what's facing them. You know, there are examples with respect to hurricanes. More people living along the coastline takes longer to evacuate. We have to make better forecasts with longer lead times, but we also have to communicate the threat so people will actually take action to avoid those storms. Up here you have, as in other parts of the United States, an increasing threat related to fire. As there are more people living in fire-prone areas, we have to ensure that our forecasts are good, that we don't have false alarms that make people not react to the forecast when in fact they should. But we also have to be able to communicate the threat and make sure that we're working with the partners in the emergency management community so that communities and right down to individuals will actually take the proper responses in the face of these events. So that's the strategic goal. There are a lot of challenges for us in terms of improving forecasts, but also improving our communication skills and linking with the emergency management communities that are actually out there trying to protect lives and mitigate property loss.
So a huge partnership effort going forward.
That's one of the important keys for the success of meeting the strategic goal.
Okay. One of the things you're talking about was understanding the weather information we're getting back from the computers, weather modeling, and you did a lot of work with that in some of your prior positions with the Environmental Prediction Center there, the National Center for Environmental Prediction. What can you tell us about recent improvements in that weather modeling? And you were using the polar orbiters as kind of a source of information that started that process.
Well, you know, first of all, we have to recognize that everything you see, you read and hear about weather, climate, or ocean forecasts are all driven by numerical models. Now, it really has been the revolution in our forecast process in the last part of the 20th century. The success of that numerical enterprise is based on three factors: big computers, global data, not just local data, but you have to have a global data set, and then the models themselves, the science that's behind the models and in running the models in an operational mode. So we're working to improve all three of those components. We upgraded our computers last year. We're going through another upgrade even as I speak will be upgrading from 200 trillion calculations per second to 700 trillion calculations per second by January of 2015. This increase in the computer will allow us to run what we call Earth system models. It's not just the atmosphere, it's the atmosphere, ocean, ice, which is obviously very important up here, and land models that are all coupled together at higher resolution. So you need the big computers, you need the science that allows us to run these models and run them in a parallel mode, and that they're coupled so that the ocean effects could affect the atmosphere and vice versa, as an example. And then the global observations are absolutely critical, and over the last 20, 30 years they've become more dependent upon the satellite systems, and especially the polar orbiting satellites, which help drive the observations needed for those models, whether they be atmospheric observations, land, ice observations. We're deriving more and more of that from satellites now that feed into these models and produce forecasts with extended lead times. Now out, for extreme events especially, we're seeing much improved forecast out in the 4, 5, 6, 7, and even 8-day range, which gets us back to Weather Ready Nation, because if you're going to get ready for a storm event, you want those consistent forecasts approaching that event from day 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, so you can take the actions several days in advance that can help mitigate the property loss and protect your livelihood.
Okay, all part of the mission of protecting life and property. Dr. Uccellini, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and speaking to Alaskans and sharing how the National Weather Service is working for Alaska and the nation. Wish you safe travels around the 49th. Enjoy your time here, sir. And for Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, about the only change we have from yesterday is there's now new ice forming up through this area here, right along or just inside the ice zone there. And about the right time of year here, latter part of September, we start seeing that. Otherwise, no changes anywhere else. Still have this area extending down toward McKenzie Bay. Marine forecast, southeast coast, west 20 to 25 knots on the south coast, seas 12 feet, southeast turning east here as you go up the coastline, 25 knots, 12 to 14 foot seas, light winds, Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait southeast at 20 with 5 foot seas. And the outlook for Monday, north to northwest now here on the south coast, 15 to 20 knots with northwesterlies turning west on the north coast, only at 15 knots with those seas hanging up there at 11 to 15 feet. Inside waters, south winds, Stevens Passage, Lynn Canal, just 10 knots with 2 foot seas, northwest at 10 and seas 6 feet for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, west winds, light west winds tomorrow at 10 knots, seas pretty slight. 15 knots out of the east here for the North Gulf Coast, and those seas running 12 to 13 feet. Northeast winds, 10-foot seas on the western North Gulf Coast. Swinging around for the Barren Islands out of the northwest, just 15. West, Kachemak Bay, north to northeast, 10 to 15 for Cook Inlet. And moving along to Monday, southwest now for Cook Inlet, only 10 knots though, slight seas, west 15, Kachemak Bay, and the Barren Islands, turning southwest here, just 10 to 15 knots along the North Gulf Coast, and east winds at 10 for Prince William Sound. And for Bristol Bay tonight, west winds coming down to 25 knots, and we've got winds diminishing here for the Alaska Peninsula, coming down 30 to 35 knots out of the west, 15-foot seas, gales extending all the way up to Sitkinak, and also on the east side of Kodiak Island, northwest 35 knots tomorrow, with southwest much lighter there for Shelikof Strait. And moving on to Monday, west 25, Shelikof Strait, small craft advisories here for Kodiak Island, and northwest 25 from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev. Actually, all the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay zones are looking at 25 to 30 knot winds for small craft advisories on Monday. And for the Aleutians, northwest, west-northwest 25 here. Unalaska Island to the west there becoming east-northeast 15 to 25. and then just a solid 25 knots out to the west. For the Monday outlook, lighter winds over the far western Aleutians, Adak and Atka, northeast 20 to 25, and roughly about the same pattern here as you head east, coming down to 20 knots more northerly there for Unalaska Island. And the southwest coast, west to northwest, 25 knots, small craft advisories tomorrow. Also for the Pribilofs up to St. Matthew Island, as well as St. Lawrence Island, seas running 8 to 10 feet. And for Monday, west 35 on the north coast here, northwest 30 on the south coast. We'll bring some gales back in with that next system coming out of the Russian Far East there, kicking the winds up again. And for the Arctic coast, east side, east 15, central coast, southeast 10, northerlies here on the west 15, picking up to 20 knots there at Cape Beaufort and 25 knots across Kotzebue Sound, the southeast Chukchi Sea. Monday, east-southeast at 10 to 20 for the east side here. Strongest winds over toward Demarcation Point, northeast 15 on the central coast, and then keep that north wind going on the west side there with picking up to 20 to 25 knots, again from Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales. And taking a look at tonight's forecast again, tense low center continues to slowly weaken, but holds together pretty well, 989 millibars. Winds diminishing, losing the high wind warning for the Alaska Peninsula, and showers back to the north there along this trough axis that swings back up along the western Arctic coast. High pressure will keep this system down to the south. Front weakens, but brings rain in across the Panhandle, westward here to about Prince William Sound, and then showers down to Kodiak Island. Pretty nice over the interior tomorrow here. Temperatures 60 to 65 over the eastern areas. Maybe this is Sitna Valley. Showers Copper River Basin. Solid showers there for the southeast coast and rain, improving Kodiak. Showery with less wind over the eastern Bering Sea. And for Monday, an upper level low brings a pretty good chance of rain from Kuskokwim Valley into south central Alaska. Just scattered showers for the Panhandle.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.